All right, we'll get up the. Yeah, I hope you're seeing the title. Everybody seeing the title?
Yes.
Okay, good. Um, all right. So, all this is um, started by Trump and his talking about annexing Greenland, his aircraft there, the cold month of January. And I mentioned last time experialism. So you can do this without doing anything of substance. We'll see if that is his ploy. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to really try to stick to the facts. You'll see this slide because I put it in periodically to remind myself to not get involved in unfolding current events. So just historical interest, and I'm going to show this slide later on, but I just want to get you to realize the larger context that Greenland's going to fit into. So we're looking straight down on the North Pole right here. And let's look at the players that are in the Arctic Circle. That's all we're going to do at the moment. So here's the Arctic Circle going around. And who are the players in there? Well, there's Russia. And in a sense, they've got more frontage. This is really, they have a home court advantage, if you will. But by virtue of the very wise purchase of Alaska by William Seward, initially called Seward's Folly, but it's no folly now because we're represented by Alaska. And you kind of have to stand on your head for this. So Alaska, Canada, and here is the actual United States. Here's Seattle, all right? Seattle just peeking up here. But we're a player. Obviously, Canada is a big time player. But look at Greenland. This is the point of the slide. Greenland would give us a double-barreled presence in the Arctic Circle. And for geopolitical reasons, not superficial blowhard reasons, but there are geopolitical reasons for us to have a big say in what's going on in Greenland. Iceland just barely. Norway is a big player, and Sweden. And these little dots down here, colored dots, tell you the kind of activity that's going on now. And if you look at where is the most activity going on, it's in Norway and Sweden. Fortunately, and Finland, our NATO partners. And NATO's going to obviously come into this story as well. We'll come back to this slide and take a little more time with it. I just, it blows my mind, and I knew it would intrigue David Pepper. So where we left off last time, though, was in the warmer climes of the Virgin Islands. We purchased them from Denmark in 1917. Now, the Danish magazine cartoonists are traditionally very daring, so I'm going to give you a trigger warning in just a second. but before we go there, Bob last time pointed out that Alexander Hamilton was born in Nevis, and where is that in relation to the U.S. Virgin Islands? It's over here. I just thought I'd throw that in. So thank you, Bob. So the trigger warning. The most recent example we've had of a Danish magazine cartoonist being provocative was their depiction of Muhammad. But back in 1917, this is Woodrow Wilson, and this is the Danish West Indies, which became our Virgin Islands. And the cartoonist shows them as adopting two infant boys. This is the more recent provocation of Danish cartoonists. They against all Muslim customs, they actually drew a picture of Muhammad, which is a no-no. And you may remember the whole Muslim world protested, and there was loss of life. Finally, there was a transfer day, and we picked up the Virgin Islands just to keep them out of the hands of Germany, because Germany could have used its control over Denmark to use the Virgin Islands as a submarine bases. And so a referendum was held in Denmark itself. So the Danish, the citizens in Denmark signed off on this. And at the transfer, Wilson wanted to fold in Greenland. They made another offer on Greenland. This was the third time that we offered to buy Greenland. Seward had wanted to purchase Greenland, and then so did Teddy Roosevelt. But again, Denmark wanted to hold on to Greenland. So this is a map going back to the Danish and Norwegian political entity in 1780, and it had included Iceland, the Faroe Islands, which are here, and Greenland. Fast forward to World War II, and all of a sudden the Nazis have occupied Denmark and Norway, and there's a Quisling government in Quisling was the name of a guy who was a puppet for the Nazis, and his name has lived on as a stand-in for all puppets governments. And so what America did was declare the Monroe Doctrine and occupied Greenland. And that was okay with Denmark secretly. They couldn't officially approve of it because they were occupied. But we went in there and set up some bases. And then this map shows this so-called Greenland-Iceland-UK gap, which is a strategic opening of water that contains that all ships that come from the Baltics, which included Germany in World War II, must then navigate. Today, we don't worry so much about Germany. It's Russia that we're worried about crossing this gap, and that'll come up again later to monitor for submarine activity. So the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. Um, and here it is again on another map. And this shows a little bit better the Faroe Islands, which are also part of the Federation of Denmark, which includes Greenland. So a choke point for both the Norwegian Sea and the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. Very strategically important. So I'm going to give you one illustration of Bob.
Oh, the map of GIUK, yeah, it shows the gap where Russia can exit the Baltic Sea, but there's another tiny piece of water further south, which is also part of the exit route out of the Baltic Sea through the North Sea and then through the English Channel.
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
Oh, because there was a case this week you're aware of, right? Of a ship tracking undersea cables, but we'll leave it. Okay, you'll come to it.
Yeah, I'm going to come to it, but then jump in again. And in fact, we're there because I'm going to give one huge example from World War II of how valuable Greenland would be. And this is the German battleship Bismarck, named after its Iron Chancellor. The largest battleship that Germany ever built, and it was one of the largest ones in all of Europe. And their intent was to send it out of the harbor in northern Germany into the Baltic, and then on out to the Atlantic Ocean to raid Allied shipping that was coming from North America to Great Britain. And it lasted out of the Baltic, outside of the Baltic, it lasted 8 days. And this is a stunning victory for the Allies. So let's start us off. This is an aerial photograph, and here's the Bismarck here in the Baltic. And I think the Strait of Denmark, the Denmark Strait, is where it's headed, and I'll show you that. Let's go back, actually. So the Denmark Strait is right here. This is all the Baltic, and this is Denmark, and the Strait of Denmark is this narrow between Norway and Denmark. And I mean, you know, if you've ever seen Hamlet performed, right? This boundary here, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. There's a proximity that is alluded to in Hamlet. But we're talking now about the Bismarck, and they went out through that strait, were attacked by the British. Remember, America's not in the war yet. This is earlier in 1941, before Pearl Harbor, and the Bismarck sank the HMS Hood, one of the prized battle cruisers of the British, and then it goes and proceeds out into the North Sea. And Hitler had not approved of this breakout. And it was only after the admiral sank the Hood and proceeded on and out towards the Atlantic that Hitler was informed. And he was not too happy because he preferred submarine engagement. And he maybe was right. Because once the Bismarck is out, the chase is on. And I'm obviously not going to go over all the ins and outs, but it was more than a minor skirmish. It was a huge cat and mouse operation. And here's where we first encounter the success of British code breakers who were able to decrypt some of the German signals and know just what the Bismarck's intention was. And that required decrypting the Enigma code. There was a specific woman who intercepted and oversaw the decryption of the German Enigma code. And so, what is Enigma? It was a machine that had 4 tumblers, right? So each tumbler contained all 26 letters, and it was spun randomly every day. And then you would get this code where one letter wasn't representing itself, but could be representing the other 25 letters. And you spun that, and 4 times it came up with an unbreakable code. The receiver ships had the code breaker, the key for the day, so the German ships that were receiving this knew what was the message was. So Alan Turing, who designed the first computer, his task was to come up with all the different combinations and run them through real fast. The one thing that the British code breakers noticed, that the 10 scrambled letters at the beginning and the end of each message were always the same. That's interesting. It was Heil Hitler. So that meant that you had a 6-letter head start each day, or 23% head start. And the other 20 letters were left for the code breakers at Bletchley Park, where Turing and the code breakers were ensconced. And this was all outlined very nicely in the movie The Imitation Game, where Alan Turing is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, one of Ico's heartthrobs. So here it is with the computer, and it's a long, complicated story, very interesting, but we won't go into it. But the code breaker that broke the code on the most important piece of information that where the Bismarck was going, she lives in great fame, and she provided the answer, and the British Air Force, which all the Brits were very upset about the destruction of the Hood, the ship. And they went on a relentless pursuit of the Bismarck and disabled its steering gear and opened it up for torpedo bombers. And it sank after 8 days. And out of 2,200 men, only 114 survived. This was made into a movie, the Bismarck movie, but it was before the whole code-breaking operation had been declassified. That wouldn't happen for another 15 years. So that part of the story's not in the movie. There was an informal agreement made in 1941 under duress and the Monroe Doctrine. 1945 comes, and there was a need to formalize what was going on. The U.S. said, okay, we got 3 alternatives. We could do a 99-year lease, or the United States could wholly take over the defense of the island, or we could purchase Greenland, and we'd like that. But that was turned down. So for the fourth time, Denmark said no to a purchase. The United States and James Byrne, he argued if we purchased it, that would prevent criticism of the United States being on Danish soil. You could save money. It's the most clean-cut, satisfactory. But Denmark wasn't ready for that. They thought once World War II was over, it would go back to the way things used to be. They hadn't foreseen the Cold War. So Harry Truman offered $100 million. And his military men said, hey, it's a military necessity, vital for us. The Danish said, while we owe much to America, we do not feel we owe them the whole island of Greenland. So they turned it down. But we just didn't leave. And in effect, that was the middle alternative, that we would provide defense for the island. But it was very, there was a lot of tension over that set of circumstances. And then finally, Denmark gave up, threw up its hands. But then the next year, both countries joined NATO. And so that kind of took the pressure off. In 1951, there was Denmark formally gave the U.S. Responsibility for the defense of Greenland, the middle option. And 1953, colonialism was over. And so Denmark felt the need to release Greenland from being a colony and turned it into an autonomous territory, which it is today. So what is autonomous territory? Denmark kept responsibility for foreign affairs, defense, monitoring citizenship, money, larger monetary policy, and any legal problems would go to the Danish Supreme Court. And so Denmark, though, continues to provide its Navy alongside the American Navy. And this is their icebreaker. America had to learn how to deal with ice. They learned a lot from Denmark. And there are joint exercises routinely off the coast. And this is one of the ports in the summertime. And this is the port in the wintertime. Looks pretty inviting here. So what does the government of the autonomous Greenland get to do? Well, it's in charge of its own internal affairs, the economy, social services, infrastructure. And the economy, just to give you perspective, is only 1/7,000th the size of America's. Only 57,000 people, and 43% of the labor force are employed by the state. In America, it's about 15% working for local, state, and federal government. Over half the government's bills are paid by Denmark, so it's still with a tremendous subsidy. And the greatest industry now is fishing, but that's about to change. here are the Air Force bases and United States bases, Navy, in World War II and during the Cold War. But currently, this is the major base. It's called a space base. If you look, right nearby is the Thule Air Base. So it's in the northeast corner where we have the space base. I'm getting used to that name now. And oddly, the New York National Guard has a presence there, along with the U.S. Coast Guard officially there. And this is radar that track and scan the skies for rockets and missiles. We're right. It's right on the sky, the flyway between Russia and America. And here is a look at it on a perspective looking down on the North Pole. And you can see Russia's just right on the other side of this. Because Greenland is autonomous, it has the right to declare independence from Greenland. Right now, it's autonomously bound to Denmark. There's been some interest in declaring that independence. It hasn't been done yet. Nobody's quite sure how to proceed. At the same time, Denmark said, you're in control of your own natural resources. So all this wealth is controlled by 57,000 people who could very quickly all become multimillionaires. And for that reason, many Greenlanders support a sale, an independence, and a sale. But many Danish still cling on to Greenland as part of their national identity. So we're at a point where this tension is going to come to a head. Could they go it alone? Iceland does. They've got many more people. But Greenland could go it alone and just say, okay, America, we'll host all the bases you want, but here are our terms. And they may not want to abandon their identity just for pride. But there's some risk. There's a risk of corruption because this is going to be a huge windfall, one way or the other. There's going to be a lot more wealth produced in Greenland in the coming decades. Extracting all the minerals means that there's going to have to be immigrant labor. What's that going to look like? What's that going to do? And then, given the strategic location and all the hybrid warfare and tricks, cyber warfare, who's going to protect Greenland from the sabotage and the propaganda? And just think of what's going on as it is in the Baltic Sea. Russia is cutting cables, just cut one to Finland, and Finland is holding a ship. I can't remember whether it was a Russian ship or a Chinese ship. And there would be a real advantage to selling to America because then you'd have all of America's security apparatus there. So how big is this windfall? So I want to go into detail a little bit about this. 43 out of the 50 minerals deemed critical by the American government can be found in Greenland. It has the largest deposit of these rare metals outside of China. And obviously, China is holding some strong cards that could be countered. These minerals are key to building a military machine and even in the green energy, batteries, for instance. So key stuff. They've got oil. But their local government, their autonomous government, banned exploration of oil. They've certainly got enough wealth without oil. So that may be an issue. So far, a lot of this wealth is unexploited, mainly because of ice. So 4/5 of Greenland is covered with ice. Now, less and less, and it's a problem. On the tundra, you can't even build roads. So all these settlements are standalone, only reached by sea or air. But as the climate warms, the minerals are going to be more accessible and more valuable. Already, in anticipation of that, there's 170 exploration sites, up from a mere 12 10 years ago. So the rush is on one way or another. I found this interesting, and maybe David can explain this later, but the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the world at large. Since the 1980s, the volume of ice covering Greenland has fallen by 70%. So that shows you the rate at which the landscape's being uncovered. And as far as Arctic shipping lanes, the first ice-free day may occur before 2030, another 5 years. So in summary, shipping, minerals, and fish, hordes of fish. The breaking of the ice is all that is keeping Greenland back from being exploited. And the economist asks, when might it be grasped? China's answer is soon. They have just come up with a polar-ready 58,000-ton cargo ship that is set the gold standard. Russia's already got 60 icebreakers, and Scandinavia's in on the act and is making a play for Greenland now. Four-sided, maybe. So here's this map again, and let's just look at the wealth here in detail. So you get precious minerals, iron, energy. There's geothermal fields like you see in Iceland, if any of you have been to Iceland. There's even diamond deposits. And you can see Canada. Now, this is Alaska. This is Seattle. And you can see already up by the Arctic Circle a lot of action in Canada, here's in Quebec, and here's Greenland, relatively undeveloped. Iceland, and then Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And then, as I said earlier, Russia has this home court advantage. How about fish? Global warming is hard on some fish, like king salmon. And that's why there's a lot of restrictions on fishing salmon in the north, because they're increasingly endangered. But the warming is making it better for certain other kinds of fish, like Atlantic cod, and they're moving up north into newer fishing grounds. And because of the nutrient-rich water, they're growing faster, and global warming could lengthen the fishing season. So fishing, mackerel, which is one of my favorites, I love the oily taste. They didn't get the Greenland until 2011. But by 2014, they were 23% of the island's earnings. Okay, let's talk about new shipping routes. So we've touched on the Northwest Passage as far back as Cortez, and Cortez made it to Baja. He was, in the back of his mind, was looking for the Northwest Passage, and he even thought it might be at the end of the Sea of Cortez, which is, of course, Arizona. So that didn't pan out. Sir Francis Drake, he was looking for the Northwest, but that wasn't, finding Northwest Passage wasn't at the top of the list. Raiding Spanish settlements and attacking the Manila galleons was really the top of his agenda, which he did very well. So well that his ship, the Golden Hind, a replica, is in the docks of the Thames River. And so we went onto this ship and looked around and got a sense. And it's really amazing that he accomplished all that he accomplished with this little ship. This ship, of course, landed at Drake's Bay and Point Reyes. And so the key objective for finding the Northwest Passage was to get a shorter route to China, to the lucrative markets, to the tea, the silk trade. And there was this guy, Juan de Fuca, who was a Spanish explorer. He was actually Greek, but he was in the pay of the Spanish. He entered into the Strait of Juan de Fuca, which is named after him, just south of British Columbia, and said, "I found it." Went back, told everybody he'd found the Northwest Passage, but what he'd only found was a route into Puget Sound. So one of the great fast talkers of the 1500s. So global warming's going to open a Northwest Passage. And so here it is, nice and neat without all the ice. And there's, all of a sudden, you're start in the Pacific and you wind up in the Atlantic. There's even talk about a Northwest Passage cruise. You maybe can do that in summer months, in very short few days, without icebreakers. But they reckon by 2050 you'll be able to do it without icebreakers. Get out your tourist maps, and off we go. There's also a northeast passage, and this is more important for China, because look what the northeast passage does. So you go up, you go through the Bering Straits, but instead of turning right, you turn left and skirt across Russia, and then down through the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap, and you're in the Mediterranean. And it cuts the current route through the Suez Canal down from 35 days through the Suez down to 25 days. So that's China. China, therefore, isn't interested in Greenland to secure a naval route. It's more interested in the minerals. And then there's talk of a transpolar route, but that doesn't offer any benefit for shipping, just academic interest. So enter Trump. He says absolutely necessary for the purposes of national security. It's true. It's the shortest route for Russian missiles, also Russian submarines, and his appointee to the U.S. Arctic Research Commission says it's not just our backyard; it's actually our front door. Unfortunately, Trump has refused to rule out using force. And this is really a rerun of what happened in 2019 when he brought this up then. And the Danish prime minister rejected it then. And Trump attacked her for making nasty comments. So this is ongoing. And we know Trump carries a grudge. And with this map and these concepts and trolling Canada, talking about the Panama Canal, how realistic is it? We already have the space base for surveillance, and it's for monitoring submarines that might be an added advantage for the United States to have a physical presence and control over Greenland. Russian skullduggery is becoming more and more ominous, and if there were an independent Greenland, would Russia bully them? Would they sabotage them? Would they attack them the way they've attacked Estonia and its computer technology? It's been noted that the 57,000 Greenlanders have what's been termed a naive view of geopolitics, and they're talking about neutrality and non-militarization, which I think many of us in our instinct mode would agree with and sympathize with. But the Greenlanders, only 2% of them think about military issues. And as I mentioned earlier, Russia is there. They've got 60 plus icebreakers. Some of them are nuclear powered. So this is a real legitimate concern. So precedents, Jefferson, he bought Louisiana even though he philosophically was in favor of a small government. And Alaska, I think we all agree, was a masterstroke. And it was called Seward's Folly in his day. Here's the size of Alaska relative to the United States, and here's the size of Greenland. And the economist goes so far as to saying this could be another deal of the century, not something we're used to hearing. But it could be done in such a way to benefit the inhabitants. But they don't want to be either Americans or part of Denmark anymore. So they've had the home rule for almost 16 years, and taking the final step of independence is probably just a matter of time. So here's the Greenland's Prime Minister, Mute Egede, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right, and Denmark's Prime Minister, who are co-equals in Denmark's federation. So the Chinese, they've been there, as I said. They're not interested in a new route to Europe. They've got other land routes, sea routes, and also they can go through the Northeast Passage. But they've been in Greenland and proposed various projects involving minerals. And some of those proposals have been blocked. The citizens of Greenland said, sure, we like your terms. You're giving us a lot of money. Welcome. But the United States and Denmark stepped in and blocked a lot of these Chinese projects. And now the Chinese are just involved with fisheries. The Greenlanders have changed their attitude towards China. They used to be welcoming, 47% 4 years ago, but that's down to 25%. China is not the problem here. It's Russia. So Denmark, maybe anticipating Trump, has proposed a military and economic reset, a military package worth $2 billion, buying more anti-submarine surveillance capability, upgrading their civilian airports to handle jet fighters. Is this too little or too late? We'll see. But The Economist says you put it to a referendum. Greenland's prime minister has been shocked by Trump, but he's welcoming American investment in mining and saying United States doesn't need to own us. But if there's going to be a referendum, Trump has to let it be a free referendum and retract his threat of force. And maybe instead he should turn to sweetening the pot. So that's the story of Greenland. I think it's more complex than what we've been reading about. And I will turn this over to, I've talked enough. Anybody else have something to say? Let's hear it.
Hey, John, it's David. You mentioned about the Arctic warming. It's not a simple thing, but the short answer is there's an albedo effect. and there's an accelerating phase, so that as the ice starts melting, the water absorbs a lot more of the water of the heat that would have been reflected off. So that's why you're getting excessive warming in the north. There's also methane, and there's darkening of the snow from the soot. There's a number of factors, but you're exactly right. The northern pole is warming very quickly, which is, of course, what we saw last week when this, the cold that's usually held by that huge ice mass comes off and ended up coming down over the United States in a very dramatic way. And, Louisiana was 27 degrees or something crazy. So anyway, that's that.
Yeah, thank you. So do we have comments from our Danish contingent?
Am I part of that Danish contingent?
Yes.
Well, several weeks ago, I made an offer on behalf of the United States to my Danish family, and I offered $2 trillion. And
I think the quickest route to wealth now is figure out a way to become a citizen of Greenland.
yes, it's very ironic for Denmark to try and insist on a rather archaic and much dismissed area of geopolitics, which is colonialism. I mean, really, what claim, honestly, this is what I kind of troll my Danish friends and family with this. What claim do you really have on Greenland? Geologically, it's part of America. It's on the North American plate. It costs you, as you pointed out, John, and by the way, the images you showed, the photographs, were absolutely amazing. Your research is extraordinary. But it costs the Danes, who always talk incessantly about their taxation, 500 million a year in contributions to the 57,000 people, less than the size of Walnut Creek. The Greenlanders, I mean, I don't think they're particularly popular as individuals in Denmark. There are many, many Greenlanders who live in Denmark. They go to the universities there, etc., free, actually, with a grant to, as all Danes have, to support themselves as well. You might have argued the Greenlanders would never accept the American way of life. What would happen to their healthcare and their free education? But of course, as you pointed out, they would just set up a fund from whatever money was transferred or whatever royalties there would be on minerals. They would be extremely well off. So maybe that's what I should do, is apply for Greenland citizenship. By the way, the Greenlanders are Danish citizens. They have 2 members in the Folketing, the parliament. And it's kind of the Scotland of the United Kingdom. Anybody with Scottish forebears here is not going to be speaking to me after that.
Well, thank you. It's nice to have
just a tour de force, John. Well done.
Well, thank you. It entailed a lot of maps, which I love. Okay.
I was going to add that that opening there to the Baltic called the Giuk,
Yeah.
now GIUK, that stretch of water, Greenland, Iceland, UK. There is obviously another exit from the Baltic, which is down through the English Channel, and it's a rather well observed and protected area of water, of course. But just last week, a Russian scientific vessel, the Vaktar, I think it was called, was observed researching where all the undersea cross-channel cables are, and they are being followed by a British ship at the moment. So it's it's one of the many threats that Russia has over Western Europe at the moment.
Yeah, Russia's just playing spoiler. What is their ideology? What's their argument? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that's what we have.
And then I just got to point out 500 million sounds like a lot, but that's 1/1000th of what Elon Musk is worth. So maybe he should buy it and for 20 billion and he could lease it to us.
Actually, The Economist did a calculation, and I think they came up with a number of 50 billion being a reasonable price, which is only 1/20th of what I suggested that they should demand. I mean, all kidding aside, I think we need a peaceful settlement to this, and it's going to go. I think it will end up in the strategic advantage of the United States and the financial advantage of Denmark.
Yeah. You almost wonder whether NATO would come in at some point as an umbrella organization that everybody's a member of, but NATO's not in good odor with Trump.
But what is it that as of today now it's the Gulf of America and that Greenland would fit right in. So it's all gonna, that's the American plate.
Well, I think Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, English Channel, La Manche, Persian Gulf, Arabian Gulf, many bodies of water have multiple names depending on where you're observing it from. I'm not sure Gulf of America is a very good name. I just said Golfo di Vespucci.
Yeah. Well, I remember way back when Bob, we were talking about the maps of Baja California, and was Baja an island, and was the Sea of Cortez really a sea, or was it the Northwest Passage? All these things are interesting.
So,
there's a Danish TV series called, I'll pronounce it the English language way, Borgen, which is actually very, very good. It's a political drama. It has 3 episodes on the Greenland problem, the strategic problem, and it's extremely informative. A Danish TV series called Borgen.
What's the venue there?
Well, it's now on Netflix, I believe. We saw it on something else.
That's with the female vice president or president, isn't it?
Yes,
Morgan?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Very
actually,
well done.
I recommend it anyway because it's great viewing.
All right.
By the way, here was that the National Geographic article about it was just this month, and it has to do with the base, which was base Century, was it? Which was where they had the United States during the Cold War from 56 or 58 to 69. They had a base to launch missiles from to Russia, and till finally what it was is the ice was moving so much that it basically was kind of like, oh, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? And so they had huge machines that were tunneling machines, and it was buried down quite a ways down into the ice, and they were with these tunnels. And so it's a fascinating article to see what could have happened. And I think they've just rediscovered it recently, that when somebody was searching, from astronauts, or from satellite images, they were looking and say, "Wow, there's something under here," and it turns out that there was all of these tunnels that was called Base Century, I believe.
Wow. Oh my goodness. All right. Any other comments?
John, I just want to fact check you on the 70% loss of the ice sheet, because I know in places it's like a mile thick. So I'm going to try to look up this week, and I'd love to hear where you got that reference from.
I got it from an Economist article, and I think it's not the surface, but the volume.
The volume, yeah, I know it's still an incredible
Yeah, that's the
loss.
point David's making. That
I'm
volume
saying
is
the volume is even more because it means that if it was a mile thick, it's going to be 3,000 feet thick, which means 2,000 feet of loss, which I or 3,000 feet. I got to fact check on that one.
All
Might
right.
be surface area.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. That was great.
All right. Thank you. See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.